This is the final shot of a video of mine called At the House of Mr. X, completed in 2007. It shows the Barbara Hepworth sculpture pierced oval form. The architecture and artworks that are visible in the sculpture's polished surface are the Stanley Picker House and Art Collection. The house is late modernist, completed in 1969. It was designed by Kenneth Wood as a London home for the industrialist Stanley Picker. It was also intended to house his collection of post-war British art and was furnished with his collection of slightly later pop-era design. Picker died in the early 80s and left no immediate recognised family, so the house was only briefly inhabited and has been preserved since then, exactly as Stanley left it, by the Stanley Picker Trust. It is rarely populated, of ambiguous status, functioning neither as a home nor a museum. It is perhaps best understood as a memorial. It was partly because of this character of mourning and absence which defined the house that I was so interested in the Hepworth sculpture located there, and used it to conclude my film. It was one of a number of shiny, highly reflective sculptures which intensified and reshaped the colour-infused geometries of the house. These seemed to elaborate a fluid, heterogeneous sensuality that spoke to the dissonant connections between the shattered bodies of the grief and guilt-ridden post-war art and the elastic, optimistic shapes of the pop-era design. Many of which offered the ergonomic profile of an absent body, or maybe more precisely, a putative body, not a past body, a future body. I only initially visited the house out of general interest, whilst undertaking the Stanley Picker Fellowship in 2006, but upon encountering these shapes and surfaces and experiencing their cumulative effects, I postponed my proposed project in order to think about and respond to them instead. This notion was clarified for me by two small discoveries during that first visit to the house. One was the discovery of a small fingerprint visible on the lustrous surface of the Hepworth sculpture. It was iridescent violet, the colour of eyeshadow. I could not be sure whether this was the record of a furtive pleasure or the accidental trace of some dutiful labour, of cleaning or repositioning the artwork. The other discovery was of ephemera relating to Stanley Picker's manufacturing business. Amongst a bundle of papers relating to the materials specification for the house, a curatorial inventory of the art and design works in the collection, were a series of point-of-sale documents for cosmetics, which was the business in question. Indeed, Stanley Picker's wealth had been generated through the manufacture of cheap, high-street brands, Outdoor Girl, Miners and Mary Quant, cosmetics which were aimed at teenagers and young women of lower income brackets. Incidentally, including me. As a teenager, I had saved up for, purchased and worn these products, and so I received a small shock in encountering my own connection to the house and collection. I experienced this as a minor violation of the privacy of my coming of age, the humiliations and pleasures of which had, unbeknownst to me, also contributed to the creation of this luxurious memorial. But also, it left me with the sense of an intimate and complicit entanglement in the sensual pleasures of the house. The Hepworth sculpture, along with its lovely violet postscript, made by an unknown author, seem to synthesise my manifold understandings of and responses to the house and its contents. The video is constructed as a tour of the house. The narration, which is provided as an on-screen text, leads the viewer from the entrance through the house, progressing through its social and work spaces, arriving eventually at the bedrooms and dressing rooms. As a tour guide might, the narration points out the architectural materials and identifies the design and artworks. The narration is accompanied throughout with body percussion, hand claps and finger snaps, and also, occasionally, with singing. This film was the first artwork in which I used pop melodies, intended here to invoke the sense of a spectral occupation of the house. I imagined a kind of ghostly teenage girl group inhabiting the house, acting as its host. My idea was that this would inflect the graphic narration with a certain attitude. The script for this narration is derived from the three kinds of administrative material I found at the house: the material specification for the architectural design, a curatorial inventory of the art and design works in the collection, and a series of point-of-sale documents for cosmetics. And as we move through the house, we also migrate between these different languages, all of which address material qualities and phenomena, each of which, in different ways, account for the reality of the house and the art collection. In this next section, the narration shifts from the language of the curatorial inventory into the language of cosmetics, which is deployed in collusion with the reflective surfaces of the art and design works to render the house mutable, soft and liquid.
In the house of the inventor of the first spiral mascara brush, of eye wipers, loads of lash, and chopped silk lipstick, or soft center candy floss, in Italian pink or sari peach, as well as eye gloss, skin drink, liquid stockings, nature tint, starker's glow. Makeup to make love in. Everything that is needed, nothing that is not. 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 Makeup to make love in. Let's put it on at the house of Mr. X.
And in this final section, the viewer is exhorted to imagine adding their own bodily materials to the house as a radical extension of its lovely decor. To urinate, to defecate, to ejaculate. This proposition, inspired by the violet fingerprint, and that perhaps inspired by the Barbara Hepworth sculpture, extends the logic of that lovely stain through every possible trace of the body, and is intended to summon up, for me and for you, a carnal knowledge of a bodily inhabitation of this empty, perfect house. For me, this gesture is ambiguous, or perhaps more precisely, unreconciled. I am unsure whether it amounts to a transgression of the house's domestic ideal, or its consummation through a kind of fulsome expenditure of my own body in completing it. Looking back on it now, whilst the denouement is not intended to be aggressive, but sensual, I think perhaps there is some psychic revenge at play.